What's up, guys? Welcome to June 18th as we dive into 2 Kings chapter 11, where it talks about Athaliah rules in Judah. When Athaliah, the mother of King Ahaziah of Judah, learned that her son was dead, she began to destroy the rest of the royal family. But Ahaziah's sister, Jehoshaphat, the daughter of King Jehoram, took Ahaziah's infant son Joash and stole him away from among the rest of the king's children who were about to be killed. She put Joash and his nurse in a bedroom, and they hid him from Athaliah, so the child was not murdered. Joash remained hidden in the temple of the Lord for 6 years, while Athaliah ruled over the land. 2 Chronicles chapter 22, verse 10. When Athaliah, the mother of King Ahaziah of Judah, learned that her son was dead, she began to destroy the rest of the Judah's royal family. But Ahaziah's sister Jehoshaphat, the daughter of King Jehoram, took Ahaziah's infant son Joash and stole him away from among the rest of the king's children who were about to be killed. She put Joash and his nurse in a bedroom. In this way, Jehoshaphat, wife of Jehoiada, the priest and sister of Ahaziah, hid the child so that Athaliah could not murder him. Joash remained hidden in the temple of the Lord for 6 years while Athaliah ruled over the land. Revolt against Athaliah. In the 7th year of Athaliah's reign, Jehoiada the priest summoned the commanders, the Kerites, mercenaries, and the palace guards to come to the temple of the Lord. He made a solemn pact with them and made them swear an oath of loyalty there in the Lord's temple. Then he showed them the king's son. Jehoiada told them, "This is what you must do. A third of you who are on duty on the Sabbath are to guard the royal palace itself. Another third of you are to stand guard at the sole gate, and the final third must stand guard behind the palace guard. These 3 groups will all guard the palace. The other 2 units ace guard. These 3 groups will the other 2 units who are off duty on the Sabbath must stand guard for the king at the Lord's temple. Form a bodyguard around the king and keep your weapons in hand. Kill anyone who tries to break through. Stay with the king wherever he goes." So the commanders did everything as Jehoiada the priest ordered. The commanders took charge of the men reporting for duty that Sabbath, as well as those who were going off duty. They brought them all to Jehoiada the priest, and he supplied them with the spears and small shields that had once belonged to King David and were stored in the temple of the Lord. The palace guards stationed themselves across the king with their weapons ready. They formed a line from the south side of the temple around to the north side and all around the altar. Then Jehoiada brought out Joash, the king's son, placed a crown on his head, and presented him with a copy of God's laws. They anointed him and proclaimed him king, and everyone clapped their hands and shouted, "Long live the king." 2 Chronicles chapter 23. In the 7th year of Athaliah's reign, Jehoiada the priest decided to act. He summoned his courage and made a pact with 5 army commanders: Azariah, son of Jehoram, Ishmael, son of Jehohanan, Azariah, son of Obed, Maaseiah, son of Adiah, and Elishaphat, son of Zechri. These men traveled secretly throughout Judah and summoned the Levites and clan leaders in all the towns to come to Jerusalem. They all gathered at the temple of God, where they made a solemn pact with Joash, the young king. Jehoiada said to them, "Here is the king's son. The time has come for him to reign. The Lord has promised that the descendant of David will be our king. This is what you must do. When your priests and Levites come on duty on the Sabbath, a third of you will serve as gatekeepers, another third will go over to the royal palace, and the final third will be at the foundation gate. Anyone who should stay in the courtyards of the Lord's temple. Everyone else should stay in the courtyards of the Lord's temple. Remember, only the priests and Levites are on duty may enter the temple of the Lord, for they are set apart as holy. The rest of the people must obey the Lord's instructions and stay outside. You Levites form a bodyguard around the king and keep your weapons in hand. Kill anyone who tries to enter the temple. Stay with the king wherever he goes. So the Levites and all the people of Judah did everything as Jehoiada, the priest, ordered. The commanders took charge of the men reporting for duty that Sabbath, as well as those who were going off duty. Jehoiada the priest did not let anyone go home after their shift ended. Then Jehoiada supplied the commanders with the spears and the large and small shields that had once belonged to King David and were stored in the temple of God. He stationed all the people around the king with their weapons ready. They formed a line from the south side of the temple around to the north side and all around the altar. Then Jehoiada and his sons brought out Joash, the king's son, and placed the crown on his head and presented him with a copy of God's law. Then anointed him and proclaimed him king, and everyone shouted, "Long live the king!" The death of Athaliah. When Athaliah heard the noise made by the palace guards and the people, she hurried to the Lord's temple to see what was happening. When she arrived, she saw the newly crowned king himself standing in his place of authority by the pillar, and as was the custom at time of coronation, the commanders and trumpeters were surrounding him, and people from all over the land were rejoicing and blowing trumpets. When Athaliah saw all this, she tore her clothes in despair and shouted, "Treason! Treason!" Then Jehoiada the priest ordered the commanders who were in charge of the troops, "Take her to the soldier in front of the temple and kill anyone who tries to rescue her, for the priest had said she must not be killed in the temple of the Lord." So they seized her and led her out of the gate where the horses entered the palace grounds, and she was killed there. When Athaliah heard that, so now we're going to jump to 2 Chronicles chapter 23, verse 12. Then Athaliah heard the noise of the people running and a shout of praises to the king. She hurried to the Lord's temple to see what was happening. When she arrived, she saw the newly crowned king standing in his place at authority by the pillar of the temple entrance. The commanders and the trumpeters were surrounding him, and people from all over the land were rejoicing and blowing trumpets. Singers with musical instruments were leading the people in a great celebration. When Athaliah saw all this, she tore her robes and clothes in despair and shouted, "Treason! Treason!" Then Jehoiada the priest ordered the commanders who were in charge of the troops, "Take her to the soldiers in front of the temple and kill anyone who tries to rescue her, for the priest has said she must not be killed in the temple of the Lord." So they seized her and led her out of the entrance of the horse gate on the palace grounds, and they killed her. 2 Kings chapter 11. Jehoiada's religious reforms. Then Jehoiada made a covenant between the Lord and the king and the people that they would be the Lord's people. He also made a covenant between the king and the people, and all the people of the land went over to the temple of Baal and tore it down. They demolished the altars and smashed the idols of Pierce, and they smashed the idols to pieces, and they killed Matan the priest of Baal in front of the altars. Jehoiada the priest stationed guards at the temple of the Lord. Then the commanders, the chariot mercenaries, the palace guards, and all the people of the land escorted the king from the temple of the Lord. They went in through the gates of the guards into the palace, and the king took his seat on the royal throne. So all the people of the land rejoiced, and the city was peaceful because Athaliah had been killed at the king's place. Joash, who was 7 years old when he became a king. 2 Chronicles chapter 23, verse 16. Then Jehoiada made a covenant between himself and the king and the people that they would be the Lord's people. And all the people went over to the temple of Baal and tore it down. They demolished the altars and smashed the idols, and they killed Matan, the priest of Baal, in front of the altars. Jehoiada now put the priests and Levites in charge of the temple of the Lord, following all the directions given by David. He also commanded them to present burnt offerings to the Lord as prescribed by the law of Moses, and to sing and rejoice as David had instructed. He also stationed gatekeepers at the gates of the Lord's temple to keep out those for any reason were ceremonially unclean. Then the commanders, nobles, rulers, and all the people of the land escorted the king into the palace, into the temple of the Lord. They went through the upper gate and into the palace, and they seated the king on the royal throne. So all the people of the land rejoiced, and the city was peaceful because Athaliah has been killed. 2 Chronicles chapter 12. Joash rules in Judah. Joash began to rule over Judah in the 7th year of King Jehu's reign in the north. He reigned in Jerusalem 40 years. His mother was Zibiah from Beersheba. All his life, Joash did what was pleasing to the Lord's sight, because Jehoiada the priest instructed him. Yes, even so he did not destroy the pagan shrines and the people who still offered sacrifices and burnt incense there. One day, King Joash said to the priest, "Collect all the money brought as a sacred offering to the Lord's temple, whether it is a regular base assignment, a payment of sorrows, or a voluntary gift. Let the priest take some of that money to give for those who whatever lost are needed at the temple." But the 23rd year of Joash's reign, the priests still had not repaired the temple. So King Joash called for Jehoiada and the other leaders and asked them, "Why haven't you repaired the temple? Don't use any more grass to your own needs. From now on, it must all be present in the temple stairs. So your own words, from now on, it must be spent on temple repair." So the priests agreed not to accept any more gifts from the temple, and they also agreed to let others take responsibility for repairing the temple. Then Jehoiada the priest bored a hole in the lid of a large chest and set it on the right hand side of the altar at the entrance of the temple of the Lord. Then priests guarded the entrance, put all the human conditions behind into the chest. When the chest became full, the court secretary and the high priest counted the money that had been brought to the Lord's temple, and put it into bags. Then they gave the money to the construction supervisors, who used it to pay the people working on the Lord's temple, the carpenters, the builders, the masons, and the stonecutters. They also used the money to buy the timber and the finished stone needed for repairing the Lord's temple, and they replied any other expenses related to the temple of the Lord's to the temple's resurrection, restoration. The money brought to the temple was not used for making silver bowls, lamps, snuffs, basins, trumpets, and other articles of good or silver from the temple of the Lord. It was paid to the workmen who used it for the temple's repair. No accounting of this money was required from the construction supervisors because they were honest and trustworthy men. However, the money that was contributed, they were still honest and However, the money that was contributed for guilt offerings and sin offerings was not brought into the Lord's temple. It was given to the priests for their own use. 2 Chronicles chapter 24. Joash was 7 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem for 40 years. His mother was Zibiah from Beersheba. Joash did what was pleasing in the Lord's sight throughout the lifetime of Jehoiada the priest. Jehoiada chose 2 wives for Joash, and he had sons and daughters. At one point, Joash decided to repair and restore the temple of the Lord. He summoned the priests and Levites and gave them these instructions: go to all the towns of Judah and collect the required annual offering so that we can repair the temple of the Lord. Do not delay. But the Israelites did not act immediately, so the king called for Jehoiada the high priest, and asked him, why shouldn't you command that the Levites go out and collect the temple taxes from the towns of Judah and from Jerusalem? Moses, the servant of the Lord, levied this tax on the community of Israel in order to maintain the tabernacle of the Lord, from the temple of the Lord, to worship the images of Baal. So now the king ordered the chest to be made and set outside the gate leading to the temple of the Lord. Then a proclamation was sent throughout Israel and Jerusalem, telling the people to bring to the Lord the tax that Moses, the servant of God, had required of the Israelites in the wilderness. This pleased all the elders and the people, and they gladly brought their money and filled the chest with it. Whenever the chest became too full, the Levites would carry it to the king's officials. Then the court secretary and an officer of the high priest would come with a large amount of food. A large amount of money was collected. The king and Jehoiada gave the money to the construction supervisors, who hired masons and carpenters to restore the temple of the Lord. They also hired metal workers who made articles of iron and bronze for the Lord's temple. The men in charge of the renovation worked hard and made steady progress. They restored the temple of the Lord according to its original design and strengthened it. When all the repairs were finished, they brought the remaining money to the king and Jehoiada. It was used to make various articles for the temple of the Lord, articles for worshiping services and for burnt offerings were sacrificed continually in the temple of the Lord during the time of Jehoiada the priest. Jehoiada lived to a very old age, finally dying at 130. He was buried among the kings in the city of David, because he had done so much good in Israel for God and his people. Jehoiada's reformed reversed. But after Jehoiada's death, the leader of Judah came and bowed before King Joash and persuaded him to listen to their advice. They decided to abandon the temple of the Lord and the God of their ancestors, and they worshipped Asherah's poles and idols insisted. Because of this, then divine anger fell on Judah and Jerusalem. Yes, the Lord sent prophets to bring them back to him. The prophets warned them, but still the people would not listen. Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon Zechariah, son of Jehoiada the priest. He stood before the people and said, "This is what the Lord says. Why do you disobey the Lord's commands and keep yourselves from prospering? You have abandoned the Lord, and now he has abandoned you." Then the leaders plotted to kill Zechariah, and King Joash ordered that they stone him to death in the courtyard of the Lord's temple. That was how King Joash replied Adonai, oh, Jehoiada for his royalty by killing his son. Zechariah's last words as he died were, "May the Lord see what they are doing and avenge my death." Second, the death of Jehu. At about this time, the Lord began to cut down the size of Israel's territory. King Hazael conquered several sections of the country east of the Jordan River, including all the Gilead, Gad, Reuben, and Manasseh. He conquered the area from the town of Aronier, no, Ariel, by the Arnon Gorge, so to as far north as Gilead and Bashan. The rest of the events in Jehu's reign, everything he did, and all his achievements are recorded in the book of the history of the king of Israel. When Jehu died, he was buried in Samaria. When his son Jehoahaz became the next king. In all, Jehu reigned over Israel from Samaria for 25 years. Oh, it's always my least favorite part of the Bible when I have to read construction, because like I don't fully understand how measurements work back then, and also I'm just like whenever I start reading these kinds of things, I get really tired. And when I get tired, I tend to say things I don't even know why I said it. But the thing that's like I totally forgot about the story of Joash, how his mother became a queen for like a little while, for like 7 years, and how Joash was basically hid from his own mother. Yeah, it just like wait a second, I don't think by this time he conquered. Then the rest of the when Jehu died, he was buried in Samaria. Then his son Jehoahaz became the next king. In all, Jehu reigned over Israel from Samaria for 28 years. But yeah, his mother, Athaliah. It's like I don't understand. Like if your family already has committed a sin, the actions of one person, why not just repent and ask God for forgiveness? Why is that she goes above and beyond when it comes to disobeying God, when it comes to dishonoring God, when it comes to fit into the world, into our society? But yeah, there's not like a whole lot to get out of. It's basically that, and then the rest of it just like describing like how to make the Lord's temple, and like how they were able to open up the temple after with it being shut down stuff. But yeah, I don't have anything else to share, so may you guys go and walk with God.